2.5 millennia ago, the streets of ancient Athens produced a thinker who mapped the contours of human logic. We treat him as the undisputed architect of Western philosophy. Yet, for a man whose intellect shaped thousands of years of scholarship, there is a glaring historical void. Socrates never wrote down a single word of his own philosophy. Every argument, every dialogue, and every quote attributed to him survives solely through the filters of other writers. We rely completely on the texts of his devoted students, primarily Plato and Xenophon, to hear his voice, and those accounts conflict. While his pupils painted him as a genius, critics of his era saw a menace. The playwright Aristophanes publicly ridiculed him in his comedies, branding Socrates a false sage and a dangerous corrupter of the city's youth. We are left studying a paradox. The most famous mind of antiquity is, in reality, a literary character, a figure vigorously debated and endlessly reconstructed entirely from the memories of other people. His physical reality aggressively defied the idealized marble statues of Athenian heroes. He was notoriously poor, possessed blunt, unrefined features, and completely ignored conventional aesthetics. He practiced extreme asceticism. Year-round, through sweltering summers and freezing winters, he wore the exact same coarse cloak. He routinely walked barefoot, even over solid ice, seemingly immune to the cold. His public behavior was equally jarring. On one military campaign, soldiers watched in disbelief as he stood completely paralyzed in deep meditation, staring at the horizon for 24 straight hours without moving a muscle. Look at the facts. An unkempt man with zero material wealth, bizarre social habits, and no written manifesto. How did someone entirely detached from standard measures of success become recognized as the sharpest intellect of his era? The answer begins with a prophecy. A childhood friend of his traveled to Delphi, the most sacred site in Greece, to ask the oracle a direct question. Is there any man wiser than Socrates? Speaking on behalf of the god Apollo, the prophetess gave a definitive answer. There was no one. When word reached Socrates, he was entirely baffled. He possessed a deep, unwavering conviction that he held absolutely no profound knowledge. Assuming the god spoke in riddles, he set out to systematically disprove the prophecy. He scoured Athens, interrogating the city's most respected politicians, celebrated poets, and master craftsmen to find someone objectively smarter than himself. Instead of finding superior intellects, he uncovered a universal blind spot. These elites were highly skilled in their specific traits, but that localized success caused them to falsely believe they were masters of grand, universal truths they actually knew nothing about. Socrates located the truth of the oracle within his own lack of certainty. He was the wisest man in Athens specifically because he was the only one capable of recognizing the exact boundaries of his own ignorance. Armed with this realization, he abandoned the political elite and took his inquiries directly to the public squares and gymnasiums, engaging anyone willing to talk. He styled himself as an intellectual midwife, believing truth already exists inside a person. Through the Socratic method, he used seemingly innocent questions, followed by precise counter-questions, to systematically back the speaker into logical inconsistencies, until their initial assumptions completely fell apart. This stood in strict contrast to the professional debaters of his time, the sophists. Socrates never charged a fee for these sessions, and more importantly, he never tried to implant his own ideas into his counterpart's mind. Philosophy took on a completely new definition through this method, the active, often painful process of constant self-reflection. But stripping away the illusions of the powerful carries a cost. Publicly dismantling the core logic of Athens' most influential figures, decade after decade, generated massive social resentment. His questions carried a heavy moral weight. Socrates held that knowing what is good is the same as doing what is good, making ignorance the root of all evil. Under this logic, exposing a leader's lack of knowledge acted as a direct indictment of their moral character. By the time he reached the age of 60, the establishment had endured enough. The Athenian courts officially arrested and condemned him. The formal legal charges were specific. They accused him of corrupting the youth and failing to recognize the gods of the state. Instead, they claimed he invented new deities, a twisted reference to the inner moral voice, or daemon, that Socrates said guided his actions. The trial functioned as a political safeguard for the Athenian establishment. By condemning him, they sought to silence a man whose constant questioning had become a direct threat to their authority. Standing before his accusers, he offered zero apologies. He remained absolutely defiant, informing the jury that his questioning was a divine mission and refusing to back down from his life's work. In response, the court handed down a fatal verdict. He was sentenced to die by the forced ingestion of hemlock poison. As the poison was prepared, the scene in his cell presented a stark contrast. While his closest followers wept in sheer terror, Socrates remained completely fearless, speaking with unbroken peace and nobility. He gladly accepted his execution rather than compromise the integrity of his logic or falsely admit to crimes he did not commit. 2,500 years later, his exact words remain lost, but his logic survives intact. True intelligence requires extreme humility. The most powerful thing a mind can